Well, amidst the dumpster fire that is sometimes social media, every once in a while there is a light that shines. A light that I have found recently across social media is this hashtag phenomenon called Tiny Advent Poems. Tiny Advent Poems. And I would encourage you this week to go on your social media or search of choice into some of these tiny Advent poems and perhaps try to pen your own. But I wanted to share a few of my favorites here on this second Sunday of Advent. So Advent is turning off the lights before you bring in the birthday cake. Right? Makes for a better picture. The candles glow better, right? Or this, Advent. The conductor raises the baton and the choir takes a collective breath. Advent. Or how about this one? This is a little higher stakes. Advent. Refugees in a sinking raft spy the lights of the lifeboat. Glimmer of hope. This is one of my favorites as it relates to our readings today. Advent, the night before the wedding. They each read through their old love letters. That's sweet, isn't it? Well, the message of the prophets is like reading through the old love letters of the Bible as the people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. And in Luke, who pens his own little Advent poem, it goes like this. Advent. The voice of one crying out in the wilderness that everyone, all flesh, shall see the salvation of God. Now, typically when we hear the message of the prophets, we think of the heavy hitters, right? The major prophets, the minor prophets, maybe some of the contemporary prophets like Martin Luther King Jr. But two things that I have learned about a prophet through the catechesis of the Good Shepherd, our own atrium. If you spend enough time there, you will learn these things about a prophet. The first thing we learn about a prophet is one who listens. A prophet is one who listens intently to God. When the prophet speaks, it is not the prophet's own words, it is a thus saith the Lord. And that thus saith the Lord is only possible after having sat in silence, to be still, to know that God is present, and to be attuned to the voice of God. Now, secondly, we learn about the posture of a prophet, right? With hands in the air in a position of openness to God, to proclaim the truth. So we have to shed this idea of a prophet as some sort of spiritual fortune teller, predicting the future. A prophet is one who listens intensely to God, who sees accurately what's going on in the world, and then who is bold enough to tell the truth. Now, there are different ways that we can tell the truth, right? Maybe you can think of people in your life who maybe need a little bit of a filter in their truth-telling. They need to be able to speak that truth with some love, right? To soften some of the harshness of that truth. So being a prophet is not being a type of truth-telling jerk, but speaking the truth in love. Perhaps you can also imagine someone that you know in your life who has spoken a truth to you that you needed to hear, that maybe was difficult to hear, but that you felt love because they risked telling you the truth. So I think it might be helpful this Advent to think not only about these ways that we can enter into this season of anticipation, like taking a shot at our own tiny Advent poems, but maybe to also think about our own practice of prophecy, where we're not just relying on Isaiah or Malachi or Jeremiah or some big prophet in the news. But if those are the two core practices of a prophet, might we begin to think of ourselves as prophets? Might we be still enough to hear the voice of God? And might we then have the confidence to be able to speak that truth in love? You know, when John arrived on the scene, I think he probably surprised many of his family members. I wonder if he was a surprise or a disappointment, what was going on. He was expected to probably follow in the footsteps of his father, Zechariah, who was a priest in the temple. At that time, the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, was a hereditary thing. John was expected to be his father's boy. But John takes a different path. John goes out into the wilderness, a place where the people of God had long gone to become dependent upon God, a place of encounter with God because you don't have the comforts of home. And it is in that deep listening, it is in that deep reliance upon God that John is able to speak the truth. He's able to speak what he has heard God say to him. And the people begin to recognize this. This is like a prophet of old. And so we don't have to be Isaiah. We don't have to be Jeremiah or Martin Luther King Jr. You, when you listen to God, are practicing being a prophet. You, when you speak truth and love, are practicing being a prophet. And all of this enables us to live into this prayer that we prayed at the beginning of our liturgy today, that we would heed the warning of the prophets, and that God would give us grace to live according to that word. So friends, there is your homework for the second Sunday, the second week of Advent. I would love to hear your tiny Advent poems. I would love to know how you are still in practice being a prophet, listening for God. And I would love for us to be able to speak the truth in love to one another. Would that all of God's people be prophets?